What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. This is Black Cake Season 1, Episode 1. It is over on Hulu. It is based on a novel by Charmaine Wilkerson. And I did read the book, and I did a little review over on my reading channel. And so I'm going to review the miniseries, which, like I said, it's on Hulu. The first 4 or 5 episodes have already dropped, so we're going to do one day at a time, okay? So we open up this episode, and we see a young girl running through the forest and into the water. She rips off a dress, a white dress, which we'll find out later on was her wedding dress, and we see her jumping into the water, right? Then it cuts to an older woman sitting on the beach, and we see her getting on her surfboard and going out into the water. Now, while this is going on, we see a guy speaking at a career day at a school, look like maybe a high school, and he's talking to the kids about surfing. And he's like, listen, whenever you hear about surfing, you always think about, white guys on the beach. And he said, but surfing is not strictly a white sport. He said, my mom, she was from the Caribbean, and she talked to me about growing up learning how to surf and how her mother taught her how to surf. And he said, they do surf in other places, but we don't know about it. He said, and I never let that stop me growing up. I always, even though I was the only black kid out in the water, I would go out there and I would surf. He said, just like when I was the only black kid in my doctoral program, I kept going. He said, and hopefully, you guys will want to follow in my footsteps. He said, I'm still one of the only people in my field. He's like in marine biology or something like that, but he's a PhD. He's a doctor. And his name is Bennett. It's Dr. Bennett. Benjamin, I believe, Bennett. And while he's giving his speech, we see the woman on the surfboard sort of wipe out. Well, we find out later on that is his mom, Eleanor. And she falls out. She ended up breaking her leg and hurting her ribs. And he goes to visit her in the hospital. And he even says to her, he said, Mom, you know better. Like, it was too cold. You were out there without a wetsuit on. He's like, it's almost as if you wanted to hurt yourself. And she kind of gives him this look like, boy, bye. So then we cut to a young lady laying on the floor. And Byron, I'm sorry, his name is Byron, not Benny. Byron. Benny is the daughter. So Benny is laying on the floor, and Byron is trying to call Benny, and she won't pick up the phone. So he finally sends her a text saying Mom's been in an accident. She still doesn't call back. So then he finally sends her a text back and says, or he leaves her a message. She said, Mom's okay. Don't worry about coming. Well, while Mom is in the hospital, we find out that Mom has a brain tumor. So fast forward, a year later, Eleanor has passed away. And Benjamin is at, assuming a lawyer's office, waiting for Benny. And Benjamin is like, listen, we ain't seen Benny in 8 years. She's not coming. She didn't even come to her own dad's funeral. And she only lived an hour away. He was like, so can we just go ahead and, conclude whatever business needs to be concluded? And the lawyer was like, no. Like, your mother wanted it done a certain way, and I have to honor her wishes. So Benny finally comes into the room. And she's late making excuses. And she looks at her brother and she was like, I mean, come on, you're not even going to hug me? And he was like, girl, no. Like, ain't nobody hugging you. So they find out their mom writes them a letter. And in the letter, it talks about she left a black cake in the refrigerator. And when she wants them to eat the cake together when the time is right. She said, you'll know when the time is right. So they were like, all right, well, let's go back to the house and eat the cake now. And the lawyer was like, oh, no. It's more to it than that. So the lawyer gives them a jump drive. And they have to listen to it together. They have to listen to their mom tell her story together. So they have to go back. They go back to the house and they start listening to her tell her story. So the story starts like, they don't really give us a year, but I read the novel, so it was the 1960s. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, they arguing, He was like, Benny, you ain't show up for Mom. Mom needed you. She was like, well, you told me she was okay. He was like, girl, that was a year ago. Like, she had her accident a year ago. You ain't called to check on her or nothing. So anyway, so the two of them clearly have a contentious relationship. So once we hear her tell the story, she said, well, first of all, I need to let y'all know that my name is not Eleanor. My name is Coventina. That is my original name. And I was not an orphan, as she had led them to believe, but I actually had a family. And so we found out that her dad is Asian, living on the island. He got the island accent, and it's hilarious for me because, again, in the book, it really digs deep into how that happened and all of that. But it was just really funny for me to see this Asian man with this Caribbean accent. But her mom, who was Caribbean, they never really say the name of the island, but a Caribbean island, Jamaica. And we find out that her dad likes to gamble, and the mom sort of is trying to talk to him about, why do you have to gamble? Like life is good, but it could be better if you weren't gambling our money away, or I didn't have to worry about you gambling the money away. And he was like, look, I'm running this shop. I'm basically giving my stuff away on credit that people never pay back. So I got to do what I got to do. Like, basically get off my back. So then we kind of fast forward to Covey being in like in high school, like 17. I think she was 17 at the time. She's a swimmer. She loves to swim. She loves the water. And we see her that she's a competitive swimmer. Her and her best friend, Bunny. They're like the best swimmers on the island. And we found out that her mom left. And her mom left Covey there with her dad. And Covey got herself a little boyfriend by the name of Gibbs. Daddy ain't feeling it. Y'all know daddies don't want to think about they daughters dating and doing all that kind of stuff. So daddy ain't feeling it. And basically tells him, you stay away from my daughter. Right? But Covey is a 17-year-old girl who thinks she in love. Well, probably was in love. And so what does she do? She is defying her dad. So they go to the beach. She tells her dad that they're going to go training. Her and Bunny, because they're supposed to be training for this big competition that they have coming up in about a year. But they got to train for it. And they go down to the water. Excuse me. They go down to the water, and Gibbs is there with his surfboard. And she gets on his surfboard. And we find out that's why I said she already knows how to surf. And they get to, doing what couples do. They flirting and stuff. So they end up swimming off to a little alcove. Because they want to have a little private time. So they kissing and stuff. And the storm is coming. So they have to Bunny had promised, Covey had promised to train with Bunny. So they were trying to beat the storm. They knew a storm was coming, but they didn't know it was a hurricane coming. And like she said, back then, we didn't know it was a hurricane until it was already a hurricane. And Covey, Bunny, and Gibbs are all in the water. They're in the middle of this hurricane. So her dad comes down there. Bunny's dad comes down there. And they're all able to get out of the water. But in the interim, Covey's dad blames Gibbs, of course, blames him for everything. He said, listen, my daughter never lied to me before you came around. She never tried to sneak behind my back or broke curfew. Like, you stay away from my dang nabbit daughter, like I said. So, next thing we find out, and Covey was saying, that broke her heart, but, that's nothing compared to what ends up happening next. Well, somebody sets her father's shop on fire. Well, we come to find out that the island thugs set her dad's shop on fire because he owed them money because he was behind on his rent because of his gambling. So her and her dad have a huge argument when she finds out. She was like, so basically you telling me that, you gambled away, because come to find out he don't even own the store anymore, right? He done gambled everything away. So she was like, you done gambled everything away because you can't stop, you were drunk. They have one of those big old arguments or whatever. And we meet Pearl during this moment. Pearl is the housekeeper / her mama's best friend. And she vowed to her mother to keep an eye on Covey and make sure that she was okay. So, next thing you know, her daddy done allowed the neighborhood, the island gangster, Lil Man, a.k.a. Clarence, to come and call on her, to court her. And she was like, what you talking about? She was like, you told me I'm not old enough to date Gibbs, but I'm old enough to date this old man, because Clarence looked like he had to be like in his 40s, right? She was like, so I'm old enough to date him, but I'm not old enough to date Clarence. Like, what you doing? And he was like, listen, I owe him some, because, well, rewind. His friend, Bunny's dad, kind of said to him, listen, Covey is strong-willed, and either she need a mama or a husband, one of the two. So I guess he got it in his head, okay, well, she need a mama or a husband. Well, I can get her the husband. I can't get her the mama. And he said, well, he's been after me for a while, wanting to, date you. And so, I'm gonna go on to let him, and this is the way to get out, for me to get out of debt, and it's time. Like, you old enough, it's time. And she was like, wait, what? So you mean to tell me that you want me to marry this old dude? And so he basically lets her know, listen, that's what we gotta do. Like, that's the situation that I'm in. Like, I don't have nothing else to offer him. So she goes to Gibbs, and Gibbs is getting ready to go to London to go to university. And he was like, well, let's just go. And she said, listen, my dad, I've always trusted my dad to come and save me. And I trust that he's going to save me. She was like, I don't want to, mess up your situation with your schooling and all of that. My dad will get me out of this. My dad will figure out a way. Well, daddy ain't figure out a way. So next thing you know, baby, she trying on wedding dresses. And she said, I stayed quiet. I smiled. I went along with it because I just knew my dad was going to figure something out. Until she realized that her dad wasn't going to figure nothing out. The day she figured it out was when she walked in and she saw the housekeeper. I just said her name. Rose? Making the black cake, which of course is a traditional cake in the islands that was brought over by the British colonists. Their black pudding evolved into what we now know as black cake. And she said, oh, well, little man didn't want any of the old island traditions, but I guess he made an exception for the cake. And Cubby realized then that this is it. Like, my wedding is literally tomorrow, and ain't nobody figured out how to get me out of this mess. So she just basically resolves herself to the idea that she's gonna be married to this old man, and that her daddy basically sold her off. Okay, so we see her in her wedding dress, and she looked gorgeous. Oh, she looked gorgeous. And we see Bunny, who looked beautiful. And Bunny comes in and gives her a necklace, which I believe belonged to her mom, because she said, Pearl. I said Rose. Her name is Pearl. She said, Pearl made me promise that I would make sure you wore this. So I believe it was her mom's necklace. And then her dad comes in there. And she told her dad, she said, let me tell you something. She said, this is what I need you to understand. That from this day forward, you dead to me. Like, you sold me off. And so from this day forward, baby, you dead to me. So the wedding happens. We get to the reception. And at the reception, Clarence drops dead. Cubby runs off. And that's where we come in at the beginning of the episode, where we see her running through the woods and taking off her wedding dress and getting in the water. So she hides. They're out there looking for her, but she's able to hide. And Pearl and Bunny are like, she's got to still be alive. She can't be dead. She can't be dead. She's got to be alive. And Pearl was like, there's no way that she could survive. Like, there's no way. She said, they've looked everywhere. And Bunny was like, wait a minute. Maybe not everywhere. So Bunny gets a change of clothes and some food. And she goes to the little secret area where Gibbs and Pearl used to Cubby used to rendezvous. And she, says, listen, Pearl got some people, we can help you get out of town. So they end up getting her out off the island and into to London, because right now she's a murder suspect. First of all, little man's brothers think either she did it or her daddy did it, and they taking it out on her daddy. And the police then already told her father, oh, well, she's a suspect. Like, If she not dead, she got some questions to answer because we think she did it. Which is a logical conclusion to draw because I'm sure everybody knew she really wasn't married this dude. And everybody knew he was a thug. So we leave off with the first episode with her getting to London and her... They don't really fully explain it in this episode. They just say her roommate. But she's in like a nursing program. And we meet Eleanor. And she says, I thought I had left Covey on that island. I thought I had, killed Covey off. But in order for me to fully leave Covey behind, Eleanor has to die. And that's where the episode leaves off. So that's the first episode, you guys. It is a really, really good book. I'm really excited about this series. Let me know what you guys think. Go check it out on Hulu. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.